Today we're going to install the Precision Parabolic Damper on this YZ450F. This is the new 2023. Before you get too into it, make sure you have the correct damper for the handlebar position you are running. Let's start with taking off the number plate. Once we get that number plate off, we can take off the top triple clamp. So we just have to loosen the 4 screws that hold the fork tubes, and then we can get to the large steering stem nut. Now on the Yamaha, there's a spanner nut that holds it on, so we can just pull that top triple clamp off quite easily. You don't want to back the nut off all the way though. Back it off halfway, move it up, and then you can take it off the rest of the way, because it won't fit under the bar if you try and get it off the whole way at first. Now you just wiggle it on until you can get it off. Now we like to tape a rag to the front fender, so when we do this we don't scratch our front fender. Now we at least need to loosen this little wire harness clip here and get it out of the way a little bit, or you could just take it off if you want. Now we're going to get the mount ready. This is a new generation mount, so we're going to take the screws out, the two 6mm in the front here, and then we're going to start putting the set screws in. It's a little bit tricky. You have to put the set screws from the inside out. So there's a cone here and a hex. So the hex goes out toward the pivot dog, and you screw it in from the back because you can't get it past the pivot dog. I put the second one in the same way, hex towards the pivot dog. Now back those screws up pretty much as far as they will go. You want it to be pretty close to flush with the bottom side. Now we're going to put the side screws in, and those only need to go in a few turns. Hex side out, of course. Now we're ready to get the mount on. So slide a screwdriver in there between the crack, open it up, turn it sideways, get it nice and wide, and then you might need to even wiggle it on, get it off over all those little nubs that Yamaha has on that head. Now we're going to bring those set screws by the pivot dog in so they just touch the frame. Just touch, no force. Insert the two 6mm screws into the front here, and we're just going to screw them in lightly for now. And then just don't even snug them up, just kind of screw them in, get them started. You can finger snug them, and then you're gonna want to work them back and forth a little bit, but make sure that mount is in there well, and it's sitting on the top of the frame. There's a lip on the mount, and there's top of the frame. It should be flush. You might want to put your head down and take a look at that. Make sure it's down on there. And again, we're just kind of wiggling and making sure that thing is in there before we actually start to tighten it. Tapping the mount down with a soft hammer isn't a bad idea. You can also tap on the side and make sure. You should have a good solid thud sound when you're tapping. Right, now we're going to drive the set screws. You might need to back them up first and then go into touch, and then we're going to go a half a turn, but a quarter at a time. We're going to work one screw and then the other, and just go a quarter turn on each, and then go back to the first screw and get that second quarter down. Oh, you can't see it very well there, but there you go. Alright, and then back to the second screw and get its second quarter in. And then we're just gonna, go back and check that first screw, make sure it feels good. Again, when you tighten two screws, it tends to loosen the other one up a little bit, but we're not moving it here. We're just checking. This will put small dents into the frame, as you can see here. And so if you go to put the mount back on, you're not going to want to preload it with a half turn any longer, less than a quarter. Just put it until it touches and then check it after you torque the front screws. Now we're going to do the same thing with the side screws. Go ahead and get them to touch and then do a half turn per screw. Once you're done with that, we're going to go ahead and tighten up these front two screws. Work them back and forth, trying to kind of apply even torque. And then we're going to put a torque wrench on them once we get a little closer. Now we get the torque wrench, and we're going to work them back and forth again, and we're going to torque to 5 Newton meters. Again, working them back and forth. When you tighten one, it loosens the second one, so it's going to take several trips back and forth to get this done. This is only a preliminary torque. We are going to retorque once we put the damper on and work it in a little bit, getting the frame mount to settle. Now go ahead and reattach or snug up that harness clip. Once you do that, now we can get the triple clamp back on. Notice through the magic of video, all of a sudden the mount is anodized. Now make sure this little washer is properly located. There's a little step there on the stem, and it's easy to hang up on that on the shoulder of it. So make sure it seats well. And then once again, put the triple clamp just kind of halfway on and get the nut started. If you go too far, well, you're not going to be able to get the nut under the handlebar. Once we get that triple clamp down all the way, then we can go ahead and torque it. Obviously, we advise you to torque it to factory spec. Hard to do with a big nut, I know. But on the Yamaha, you're not setting the tension because there is that spanner nut. There we go. Now we can go ahead and tighten the fork tubes down. So go ahead and snug these up, and then we're going to get our torque wrench out and torque them. You can do all 4. Right now we're just going to do these 2, just for demonstration. And once again, because there's 2, you've got to work them back and forth. Now it's time to put the boot on. Now on the boot, the small end goes down, so that's the smaller hole, and the bigger hole goes up. And you get that on, and now we can go ahead and get the damper. Now this is a super tight fit, and it'll compress air because that's 4th decimal place kind of fit there. So you're gonna, as you push it down, it wants to pop back up. Now we're gonna get the 4 5mm screws, put some blue Loctite on them, and get them just snug. We're not going to torque them or anything at this point, just going to snug them up. And then we've got to adjust the damper, get it centered, and get a pivot. The idea with the parabolic is the closer the handlebars are to the rider, the more you pitch it down. So we need to adjust that, and right now we're in position number 2, and there's no lift or anything to the bars, so it gets pitched down pretty much just as far as it'll go. Alright, so here he's getting it all centered up. There we go. Gonna just snug it, make sure we're nice and centered and all the way down. Now we'll get the other 2 screws, put those in, just snug those up also. Now we're gonna, make sure we can hit the steering stops after we get this one snugged up here. So I'm gonna turn it slowly and make sure, so we can tap that stop and make sure we can tap that stop, and we're not hitting the damper, we're hitting the stop, and Yeah, there you go. Here's a nice view of the actual steering stop. So to make sure you don't go too far, notice the lever. There's that little slot there, and then there's a white line on the housing. And you want to make sure the center of the slot doesn't go past the white line of the housing. Otherwise, you're bottoming out on the damper. Now that we know the damper's in the right position, we can torque these four handlebar mount screws to 7 Newton meters. And we'll use a kind of a cross pattern here and work them. Make sure the levers stay down while you're torquing them, and make sure you have your handlebars pointed straight ahead, like you're going straight down the road, because that's when the lever's at its lowest point. So once we have those torqued, we can go ahead and slide that boot up. There's a little lip on the bottom of the lever, and there's also a indented little lip on the pivot dog also, and you can put each end of the boot into its respective little recess area. Now we can finish torquing the mount itself. Turn the damper up to 9, which is super stiff. We're just going to wiggle it back and forth here in the center. We don't want to pitch the mount or anything because we didn't finish torquing it yet. So just in the middle to get it kind of settled into its pocket, and then we can torque the mount. We're going to turn it down to 3 or so now, so we can turn it sideways, and then we can get a torque wrench in here and torque the 2 screws. So we're going to torque those 2 front screws to 8 Newton meters, again working them back and forth, top to bottom. Once again, tighten one screw, it loosens the other one, so you have to keep moving it. And this will bring that front clamp all the way together, so it'll actually, the 2 halves will actually touch in the center. Have those torqued. Center up those bars again and turn that dial up to 9 again, which again super stiff, and then just wiggle it in the middle so it puts a lot of pressure down there, and then lighten it back up to 3 or so, and we can turn it sideways and give it one last retorque again to 8 Newton meters on those 2 screws, working it back and forth like we have the whole time. And then that mount should be torqued and secure at this point. Now all that's left to do is put on the number plate and set our high speed. Click on the link so you can learn how to set the high speed correctly. We hope you found the video informative, and have fun and go riding.